For much of the Cold War, the U.S. Navy ballistic missile submarine, known as the SSBN, was a rare sight on the ocean horizon. Where they went and when was shrouded in secrecy, as it is now and will be in the future. Since the 1960s, they've been tasked to cruise undetected through the world's oceans, designed and built for one critical mission in an age of nuclear weapons, to help deter the threat of global nuclear war.
Coming partially up with the breech door.
E, away, prepare, 11, denote, 12.
The USS Rhode Island's nuclear deterrent punch is packed here along this corridor. 24 massive tubes, each capable of housing a ballistic missile. It's here in vital spaces like these where life goes on for Rhode Island's crew of more than 100 submariners.
Inside each rack, you have you have storage space for your personal items in here, and also you have a personal drawer for mostly toiletry items, gee-dug. A submarine, you're more close-knit, so it's more of a family-type setting.
Vessel hurt. Take stational panel for operation.
Take stational panel for operation.
Yeah, you can tell when a guy's actually having a bad day just from being around him on a day-to-day basis. You know, hey, this guy's having a bad day. You know what? I want to go talk to him and try to pick him up. You know, crew's mess is where the crew eats. Crew comes down, sit down, and this is where we enjoy our meals. Right now we have fruit set up because it's breakfast time. Throughout the day there's fruits, snacks, cakes. The USS Rhode Island has a little bit of history for myself because this is where my career actually started. I started here as an E1 back in 1994. I checked on board July 15, 1994. Well, I have 16 and a half years in the Navy, 3.5 left, and to finish my career where I started is kind of special to me. How many people can say that I went and I drove a nuclear powered submarine, or I went to sea on a nuclear powered submarine? Not very many people.
Plausibly live from the Podcast 99 studios, located in beautiful downtown Manteca, California, this is the Dave Bowman Show. Now, here is your host, the submarine qualified, coffee-swilling, stuffy elitist history buff, Dave Bowman.
Yeah, I know it's Tuesday, and I said I wasn't going to do another show this week, but it's Tuesday and the birds are yummy. So, there you go. 565-DAVE, 565-3283, or Dave at thedavebowmanshow.com. A loqui conitio stand-up, tell those who oppose liberty, don't tread on me. So, we start. Not to put too fine a point on it, I guess. This is something that I have wanted to do for a long time. I'm going to start it today. And it's almost a completely different podcast. I mean, it is Plausibly live, but it's more than that. Last year, I started thinking about, sorry, that's my phone going off, started thinking about the future. And unfortunately, I'm not as young as I once was. And Ben is getting up there quickly. I had his parent-teacher conference this morning, and it was impressive how smart he is. I mean, I joke about this a lot, but he's doing algebraic computations already. When I was in the first grade, I was eating paste. He's reading for knowledge. He's doing these things. And I want to make sure that someday, when he wants to know who and what I am and who or what I was, I want him to have a definitive answer. I've talked before about my great-grandfather and the fact that I know what he was, and I know where he was. I don't know why he did the things he did. I can guess, I can extrapolate, but I don't know why in the summer of 1862 he himself decided to walk from Ashdown County, Arkansas to Rolla, Missouri to enlist in the Union Army. Again, I can guess, I can assume, but I don't know. And I want to make sure that Ben knows these things. And I keep watching the news, and I keep watching television, and I keep seeing people passing away at very younger ages that are unfortunately close to where I am, and it makes me a little nervous. It really does. It causes me to contemplate things in ways that I never really used to, and I wanted to make sure. So last year I sat down and I built a website for this, and my idea was that I would record myself telling my story to Ben. Not my whole life story. I'm not going to talk about first grade and second grade. I'm not going to talk about all that, but particularly my military career. There were a couple of reasons for this. One, I do a lot of work, as you know, with veterans groups, and their stories are very important, and I truly believe this. I truly believe that we're losing World War II veterans so quickly that we need to get their stories recorded. We need to get their histories recorded. And I realized a few months ago that the World War II veteran of my youth is virtually gone now. I mean, they're all in their 90s and late 80s and so forth and so on. But the Vietnam vets, the Korean vets, are still out there. They are becoming the older generation now, especially the Vietnam guys. The Korean vets are becoming a rarity as well, but the Vietnam vets are becoming that way. And then when you realize that the first Gulf War, the war that I was a very, very small part of, was, 1991. So what's that? 01, 11, coming up on 30 years ago, pretty soon. And I realize that those stories need to be told, and those stories need to be recorded, and my stories need to be recorded as well. My original intent was to do mine. This is what I saw. This is what I did. This is what I remember. But then something happened, and it's kind of changed my thought processes here. And it's even kind of changed the reason why there's a podcast this morning, because it was just bursting to get out of me. And so I had to sit down and talk about it. Like I said, I built a website that I haven't really released yet to the general public that was originally supposed to be my story and my thoughts about some things. Built a website that I haven't really released yet to the general public that was originally supposed to be my story and my thoughts about some things. That was my original intent. Last night, though, I was doing something that 30 years ago we never imagined would happen. We really didn't. The ship's crew, USS Michigan, from the 1980s, has begun the process of putting together a reunion. Now, the ship's reunions are not unusual. They're very, particularly amongst older ships, they were very common. You get the crew together and you think about old times. In fact, a group that I belong to as an honorary member, I've never been on a Westpac, but there's a Westpac group on Facebook that is actually having a reunion next month in Branson, Missouri. And their preparations for that have been pretty entertaining to watch, and getting ready in the way that they talk smack to each other. And yet you can tell that there is a great deal of respect and a great deal of honor between them. And so it wasn't my idea, but the USS Michigan is putting together a reunion coming up next year. And talking last night with several of the guys online, which again is something we never imagined we would do 30 years ago. I think I've mentioned before, if nothing else, Facebook has done that for me. It has reconnected me to friends and shipmates that I had literally not seen or heard from since the day I walked off the boat in 2017. Some of that is good. Some of that is better. It's intriguing to me that people that I barely remember, unfortunately, or people that I really didn't like in 1987, have become very good friends and very communicative via Facebook. And it's as if it has opened up an entirely new world again for me. And I appreciate that more than anything about Facebook. But it's something we never imagined way back in in 1987, we never thought that somehow or another we would, in the future get together on social media. You have these databases, and somebody's got to go get all the ship's crew address, and you got to try to find people, and you're advertising in magazines and veterans newspapers and the likes of that to try to get people together. That's how it used to be done. Now it's a Facebook group and a Facebook page, and everybody comes in there. And I spent some time, as I said last night, talking with some people that I hadn't talked to literally in 30 years. It's coming up on the 30th anniversary of me leaving the boat, and literally I had not seen some of these people in 30 years or spoken to them or known anything about them for the last 30 years. And so it was a little bit of catch-up time, and it was a little bit of, reminiscing. And in one case, it was talking about Larry Sloan and I used to produce the halfway night shows. Larry was a fantastic entertainer and very good at putting together stuff. And of course, I was the MWR chairman by default. And even in those days, I was a bit of a master of ceremonies. I can't imagine where you would think that I would do things like that. But anyway, we were talking last night about there's a videotape somewhere of that Patrol 13 halfway night. I don't know where the video is. Larry thinks he might have it. I encouraged him to burn it because it's not something I necessarily want seeing the light of day. However, it might be good for the reunion to see that as well. But the point is that we put together what I thought were some pretty good shows under the circumstances we were under. I can't even imagine what we could do with the technology today. It would just be so much more fun and so much more interesting. And I'm very envious of the kids that go to see today, because the technology for personal entertainment is incredible compared to what it was when we went to see. So it was just something we were talking about as we were getting ready for this. But as I was talking to him and a couple of other guys reminiscing about some things, it occurred to me that maybe a better thing to do with my website, which, by the way, is SSBN-727.org, and it's in its very beginning stages. So if you go there, you're not going to see a whole lot of anything. There's a post about Senior Chief Adamson, Master Chief Adamson, and that's pretty much it. But there's also an outline of what I had planned to put together for Ben, my stories, my recordings for Ben. So I started thinking about this last night, and what I kind of came to the conclusion of was that maybe what I could do was go ahead and do what I wanted to do, which is to record my story. That's the medium I work in, is audio. Other people work in the medium of visual, videotape, video, whatever you want to call it there. Other people write. Other people do photography. And what I thought was, I'm going to present, not today, but I'm going to present my website to the crew as an open medium for them to record and save their stories as well, and kind of encourage them to do that. And it wasn't an easy decision to come to, because there's some things that I hesitated about sharing my story with. I wanted it on the record for Ben, but I really struggled with it a lot, because there's a pitfall in writing an autobiography, whether you're writing it down or recording it or whatever, and that is memories are subject to age, separation from records, and just the general misunderstandings that people have about things. I'll give you an example. Probably my best friend in the Navy and I were both involved in an incident in which I was the victim of an equipment failure in a very, very funny way. Quickly tell you the story. We were at the waterfront EDF at Subbase Bangor. We were an off-crew, so we were doing off-crew support. So we're cleaning and painting the ship. And so we can't eat on the ship. We go, the Blue Crew has the ship, so we're going to the WEDF and eating there. And our ship's crew, cooks are making the meals, and usually it's just sliders and hamburgers and cheeseburgers and the likes, simple stuff. But there's a soda machine, you know, your typical soda machine where you go and you put your cup in, you get some ice, and then you push the little button and it goes shh, and you get CO2 and syrup in your cup, and you go on your way. And for some reason that day they had strawberry soda, and I love strawberry soda. I don't know why, I just do. It's not my favorite, but it was different, and so I wanted some. And so I went back for a second cup, and everybody's out in the EDF, and you can't really see the machines where they are. And so I go in there, and I get the ice, and I go to push the little lever thing there with the cup, and the whole thing pops off. Well, the syrup is not under pressure, so the syrup just kind of dribbles out, but the CO2, the carbon dioxide water, the CO2 water, carbonated water is. And so that just basically explodes all over me. Psh! And for some reason, I don't know why, I was frozen in place. And instead of just moving out of the way of the water, I start yelling, "Turn it off, turn it off, turn it off." And Jeff Towell, the cook, comes around the corner, and he sees what's happening. And of course, in the moment of, you know, typical submarining, he just starts laughing instead of actually turning it off. And, you know, it took me a good 10 seconds to figure out what I was doing, and it was probably 3 seconds, but move out of the way. But by then I'm soaked, clearing through. And eventually they get the machine turned off. And of course, nobody else in the EDF can see this. It's just me and Jeff in there. And so I know that at this point, you know, I'm going to walk out there and I'm soaking wet. So I walk out back into the main dining facility, and it's dead silent, and everybody's looking at me. And the next thing you know, everybody's doubled over with laughter. Now, I remember that as clear as day. That is something that I remember not only happening, but my good friend Sean harassing me about that for months after that had happened. I mean, every time we went to a restaurant or a dining facility that had one of these machines, he wouldn't get anywhere near me when I would go to get that stuff, and I would stand to the side of it. He busted my chops for months, and today he has no memory of that, none whatsoever. He doesn't even know what I'm talking about when I talk about it. And likewise, he has a story about some ketchup packages and Master Chief Adamson that is hysterical. I don't remember it, and yet in his memory, I was right there. That's part of the danger, is you don't remember everything, and things you do remember, sometimes you don't remember the same way that everybody else remembers it. That's normal. The secondary consideration that I had was I don't want to insult anybody. I don't want to offend anybody by leaving them out or getting a story or an incident wrong. And that's something that I really struggled with, because one of the things I hate about so many of these books like this, Big Red is a good example, some others, is that they focus on one or two people, and they don't really seem to care, and everybody else is kind of secondary to the story. My great uncle, a guy by the name of Bill Arthur, was a paratrooper during the Second World War. He was a member of the 505th Parachute Regiment. They were the only regiment that made all 4 major combat jumps for the United States. They jumped into North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and Normandy, and they also jumped at Market Garden. So he made all of those. He was an integral part of the 505th. He's in all the records. All the stuff is there. But when I was reading the book, The History of the 505th, he literally only appears in one sentence. One. And it's almost incidental with the main character they're calling. And for the main character that they're following, that might be great. But for me, it's like, wait, this is my uncle, and you call him Wild Bill Arthur, and you don't tell me why he's nicknamed Wild Bill. I need more than that. And so there were characters who are going to come up in my story that, you know, without getting on tangents and without getting out in the left field, without telling their whole story. And I don't necessarily know their whole story. But the more I thought about it, that's one of the reasons why it was just supposed to be for Ben originally. But then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, you know what? This is what I experienced. If I keep this website just for me, that's fine. That's one thing. But if I open it up, then there's room for other people to reminisce about the same event. Hey, this is what I saw. This is what I experienced. The night of October 31st, 1986. I have my view of what happened that night. I have my own experiences, but maybe somebody else has something different. Maybe Larry, saw something different. I know Sean probably did. And those little elements I thought might open it up a bit. And so I kind of made the decision late last night after talking with a couple of folks that I'm going to offer this to them to use as well. I don't know if it'll be successful or not. I know my part will be on it, and maybe that's all we need. But at the same time, it's something that I want to do. Those little elements I thought might open it up a bit. And so I kind of made the decision late last night after talking with a couple of folks that I'm going to offer this to them to use as well. I don't know if it'll be successful or not. I know my part will be on it, and maybe that's all we need. But at the same time, it's something that I want to do. And maybe they will share their stories, and maybe they won't. In the meantime, I will tell you what happened to me, and I will tell you what's happened since then. I will tell you stories about people that I knew and how we did things, and how those people influenced me then and how they continue to influence me today. I think that's the more remarkable thing about it all. Kurt is a great example. Kurt was a guy that was on the boat. I knew him. I even went to his house a couple of times, but we didn't really hang out. We didn't really know each other well. Primarily what he was Sean's older brother. Sean, of course, probably my best friend in the Navy. And Kurt was his older brother. It happened to be on the same boat. I don't even remember when Kurt left the boat, to be honest with you. I don't even remember. I do know this. Last year before last, when I had a problem with my physical condition and I didn't understand it and I needed some information, Kurt had gone through virtually the same thing. And here it was 30 years later, and Kurt is texting me messages of great encouragement, of information, and making sure that I take care of things and that I do the right things. And it was fantastic. Kurt, by the way, works in television. If you watch any Chicago sports event, Bulls, Blackhawks, I don't know if he does Blackhawks or not, but especially the Cubs broadcasts from Chicago, Kurt's probably the engineer running that. And in fact, he was able to get me something that I have on my shelf over there that's incredible to me. He got me a Los Angeles Dodgers Vin Scully final year press guide, which are very rare and very hard to get. He was able to get me one of those. And so here it is 30 years later. And those acquaintances and friendships come back to be able to influence my life and affect my life. And it's wonderful. And I'm ever so grateful to Facebook for bringing those things back and being able to do those things. And so I thought that for the next few weeks, so we used to do a thing here on the show called Sea Stories Tuesday. But what I thought was, with your gracious permission and understanding, and again, it's almost a separate podcast. It's not Plausibly Live, the Dave Bowman Show, political talk, constitutional consideration. It's not that. But it is me, and it's my story about what I went through. And if you go to that website, SSBN-727.org, there's a thing up there that says stories, and right now I'm the only one there because obviously I haven't given it to anybody else yet. But my outline for my story is there under that, which is what I intended to tell Ben. And I think that for the next few weeks at least, I will share with you those on Tuesdays. Normally I don't like to record on Tuesdays. Normally it's very difficult to record on Tuesdays. But I think that I will do that. If you're interested in it, great. If you're not, well, it's not really for you anyway. It's to kind of record at least my story of what happened to one sailor during the Cold War and the first Gulf War. And those stories are now 30 years old. World War II ended in 1945. That means the equivalent of 1975. I'm trying to record what happened to me so that someday Ben will know for certain, and perhaps my grandchildren will know for certain, and they won't have to wonder why, like I wonder about my great-grandfather, why I did things the way I did them, what I thought, what I felt, where I went, what I did. Those kind of things will be known to them. And that's something that I really, really hope to do. Now, if you are a Michigan vet, and I know the reunion coming up is for the 80s crew, and that's great, but if you're a Michigan vet at all, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to keep your stories as well. There's nothing special about me that makes me the repository or the history major or anything like that about it. It's just that I happen to have the website, and one day I was cruising along and I noticed that nobody owned SSBN-727.org, and so I bought it and intended to use it for myself, but I think that there's value in using it for all of us, and I hope that you would be happy to contribute, writing, photographs, videos, whatever you want to do. I would encourage you to do a part of that. And if you're not one of those folks, if you're not a Michigan folk, that's fine. I hope you peruse those stories, and I hope you get an insight into who and what we were, and more importantly, why we did it. I say this a lot, we won the Cold War, folks. We were there on the pointy edge of the stick when, according to most interpretations of history, the world was, 1 minute from midnight, according to the nuclear destruction clock, and not because of global warming like it is now. There was a belief that the nuclear cowboy in the White House was going to push the button, and that things were really strained and stressed, and they were. But you had a bunch of people on one submarine. Actually, there were a lot of submarines, 41, 50, plus the fast boys, and there were a lot of us doing this. We're just one small example of it. But this is what we did, and this is why we did it, and this is how we did it. And insofar as we're able to talk about it, because some of it is still classified, and some of it is still, confidential, and unlike certain politicians, we still take those things fairly seriously. We'll talk about what we did and what we can. And I look forward to sharing those stories with you. I really do. And I look forward to seeing my old shipmates. I look forward to sharing those stories, re-jogging my memory about some things that I don't remember happening, but I'm told did. I hope we get to see that tape. I don't think we should release it publicly. I really don't. But I hope that there's opportunities to do those kinds of things. And I hope that we have many, many years of sharing those stories and sharing those feelings. And I know that we've lost so many of our shipmates already. Two in particular that I know for sure that just really impacted my life. Master Chief Adamson was one of the biggest influences I think I've ever had in my life. And of course, Bull Durham was a machinist mate who was deeply loved by much of the crew, and certainly the A-gang, the auxiliary machinist mates, thought very highly of him. So did I. But we're getting up there, and the more obituaries I read about people who died at 55 and 58 and 61 and so forth and so on, and I realize that Bill Paxton was a famous man, but Bill Paxton never did anything that we did. He got paid to read lines and hold his head a certain way and look at a certain thing, and he went on a submarine, he went on the Mirror down to the Titanic, but he didn't live the life that we lived. And I hope to bring that life to life for you and to share that with you. And I hope to bring many other stories as well. And that'll kind of become my focus on Tuesdays for the next, I don't know, however long it takes. We'll see what it does. Okay. So that's my plan. And that's, I realize this isn't really a huge podcast for a Tuesday, and maybe it's meaningless, but I wanted to get those thoughts down for you and to share them with you and to let you know what's going on. And if you're a Michigan crew member, start planning for 2018. We're going to do a reunion. I don't know if it's going to be in Bangor, Bremerton, or Las Vegas. I'm unclear at that point. I personally vote for Bangor, but there's a horse and cow in Bangor and not in Las Vegas. But that's my opinion, and we'll see where it goes. All right? Please take the time right now. Tell the people that matter in your life you love them very much. You'd miss them if they weren't there, so don't pass up those opportunities. You don't want to have that regret. I'm Dave Bowman, Plausibly Live. This is the Dave Bowman Show on podcast.
The Dave Bowman Show is a Slippery Fish Entertainment production for the Podcast 99 Network. Copyright 2017. All rights reserved. For more information or to contact the show, log on to thedavebowmanshow.com. Keep calm, and try SCE to auxiliary.
Hey, I'm gonna go do something productive. I'm gonna go watch television.